to episode 4 of the KAIJU CATACLYSM podcast. I am your host, Dreagen.
And I'm Ashley.
And today we're going to be talking to you about Pacific Rim 2, or as I like to call it, the little movie that could. For those of you who don't know, this film, or the sequel I should say, has been kind of, you don't would say languishing in pre-production, but I don't think it's gotten, now it's in pre-production, but for a while it was on again, off again, on again, off again. Pacific Rim, the first film, directed by Guillermo del Toro, while doing good, it made its money back and then some, and actually I think it was one of the biggest openers at the time in China. I can't remember if it was the biggest or the second biggest, but it did exceptionally well over there. Did pretty good in Europe. Stateside, again, it made its money back. It made, it made enough of it back where talks of a sequel were, you could do it, you could talk about it, but it didn't really do all that well. I believe it opened up number 3 in the U.S. box office, which, for a big, giant, tentpole film about giant robots fighting giant monsters is not exactly, what people want to hear. Or, what I really want to see. It didn't, in other words, it didn't really meet the numbers people wanted it to meet, particularly the studio. So when it came time to talk about the sequel, again, it made enough money where, yes, you could warrant one, but at the same time, if this really wasn't a property you really had a passion for, meaning, the people at the studio, Thomas Tull, the CEO of Legendary Pictures, honestly, you really couldn't blame anyone for not doing a sequel. From a purely financial business perspective, from a, an artistic and fan perspective, the film was very well received, and I was, all for a sequel, as was pretty much anyone who saw the film. But like I said, in, show business, it is a business. It is, designed to make money, and if your show isn't really making you money, well, it doesn't matter how good the film is from an artistic standpoint. There's really not much reason to, make another one. But there was enough, fan outpouring. The film did pretty well on home release, from what I understand. We got it on Blu-ray. So after a while, there was talks. Okay, Guillermo del Toro said, "Okay, it looks like it's happening." He turned in the draft of the script, which was entitled Pacific Rim Maelstrom. I don't know if that's still the title they're going for. I know it's still listed that way on IMDb, but since then there's been a few changes to the production, so I don't know if they're still going with that title. They're going for something else. So we'll just call it Pacific Rim 2 for the time being. So he handed in the draft of the script, he handed in the projected budget, and there was talks of doing an anime and all that coming out. They kind of coincide with, with this film to kind of build up the universe, so to speak. And then we heard the film was getting delayed. It was getting pushed back, which was like, okay, these things happen. The film was far enough out. They put a projected, release date out, but a lot of times these release dates change. And sometimes if the studio is really not sure if it's going to be able to stick with a release date, they just won't even, give one. But in this case, they gave a release date. I believe it was going to be 2017, or it was supposed to be coming out. And then we heard the film got postponed. We're like, okay, fine, these things happen. And then it became indefinitely postponed, meaning postponed with no immediate talks of getting the thing started back up again. And, Del Toro kind of waited and waited, and much like he did with the Hobbit films and to go to see Pacific Rim, it took so long for the film to get going that he had to move on. And he moved on to Pacific Rim. And now he's moved on to doing I think it's a Scary Stories. It's a children's book, which for those of you who may remember had the most horrific covers of all time. And he's now doing kind of a film adaptation of that. So he's already moved on to another project, but he's never really given up on, expanding on Pacific Rim. So then not too long ago it was announced that Pacific Rim 2 was happening, and it was back up, although now Del Toro was not going to be directing. He was still going to be producing The film will now be directed by Stephen S. DeKnight, which, for those of you who may find that name familiar, he is was the showrunner for season 1 of Netflix's Daredevil. So right away, two things. A, the film seems to be back on, which is great. Weirdly enough, it's not Del Toro, and I'm kind of a. I know we shy away from using the term fanboy on this show, but I'm kind of a Del Toro fanboy. So when I heard that he was not going to be directing the sequel, I was admittedly kind of bummed out. But then I heard his choice, and well, before I even say that, but I know my first thought was, okay, they booted Del Toro off the project, and they're just kind of giving it over to somebody else, which I thought, well, that's kind of a dick move. But then reading more into it, I see that, okay, that it was kind of basically just scheduling issues now that Del Toro kind of has already agreed to do this other film, so he really can't now go back.
Kind of like when he was supposed to do The Hobbit.
Yeah, like I was saying, he was, he wanted to do the Hobbit films, but ironically enough, he had Pacific Rim lined up, and pre-production was just taking forever, and it was a similar situation where there was an issue of rights and budgets and all that, and he was just kind of sitting around, and finally he was like, listen guys, if I were to start this movie tomorrow, I would not be able to finish it in time before I go start this other film, and I've already agreed to go do this other film, and it's not fair to them, so he, regretfully bowed out, and, handed over to Peter Jackson, or rather Peter Jackson just kind of took over. And, he went to go do Pacific Rim. It's a similar situation here, although now here he's not, like, cutting ties with it altogether. He's still involved with it. This is still a labor of love for him, so he, working with the studio, and he's, on Twitter has professed his, his joy for, DeKnight taking over, and that he's giving his seal of approval. So right away I felt, okay, that worked. Del Toro's involved. He's not being booted off. And then recently, a bit of casting news came for John Boyega, who played was it Finn from
Finn or FN281? I don't remember his technical name.
Yeah, his technical name.
But Finn.
Before Poe Dameron just called him Finn. From Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Unleashed, and he's been added
to... The Force Awakens.
Or The Force Awakens, wow. Oh, I'm sorry.
Wrong Star Wars thing.
Yeah. All the unleashing. Well, yeah, at least I was still in Star Wars.
Unleash, Awakening,
it's all the same. Someone's getting excited. But yeah, so right away he's been added to the roster. My first thought was, okay, well, who's he playing? And then I read Idris Elba's character, the character with probably the weirdest name in movie history. I'm going to look it up right now because I never know how to pronounce it until I actually look at it. Here we go. Stacker Pentecost. I guess it's not that hard to pronounce. It's just kind of a strange...
Stacker,
yeah. Everyone, but it's one of those things, because everyone was like military personnel, everyone was always referred to their last name in that movie, so I actually forgot that his first name was Stacker.
Yeah, I kind of forgot, yeah. I was thinking just Pentecost.
And he was Marshall Pentecost.
Yeah, so it's like the universal... whatever.
Yeah, high and mighty military name. So most of the film he's being called Marshall because everyone is like a subordinate. So I barely
Sensei.
Yeah, so I barely heard his name at all. When the few times it was his last name, Pentecost. So he's playing his son, and spoiler alert, Idris Elba's character dies heroically, I might add, in the first film. So it's with no mention he had a son, because in that film he basically had an adopted daughter. Mako Mori, yeah. And she was actually played by Rinko Kikuchi, and she was actually my favorite character in the movie. I think I don't know if that was her first Western film or not.
It was the first big film she's been in, and if she's been in any...
And at least in the West. I know she's got a pretty good...
now she's been in a couple others, I think. But...
Yeah, she was in the remake of... what was the movie with Keanu Reeves, and he was a samurai? 47 Ronin. She actually played a villain in that, and while I didn't really particularly think that film was amazing, she was good, and I actually liked her as a villain. She was really, really good, and she's not too bad on the eyes. She's a pretty lady, as we like to say. Yeah. And she's 35, and she looks like she's 22. Like I looked at her and I was like, oh my god, she's older than me. And she's just dropped dead. But no, so I was worried that, are they going to do like a rehaul of the whole cast? And from what it sounds like, because Del Toro's involved, he's even said that in a tweet that basically John Boyega is going to be a good addition to these characters cast. So it sounds like, they're bringing back kind of the old crew, minus, the people who died, of course. And,
How old is John Boyega?
John Boyega, I think he's in his early. I think he's like 22.
I was gonna say it'd be interesting if he is being added to the rest of the original cast. If they, either did it where she's kind of like I guess she's not really old enough to be like a motherly figure to him.
Maybe like a bigger sister.
Yeah, like a big sister.
He's 24 years old.
Oh, 2 years younger than me.
Yeah, he's a little older than that. I first actually saw John Boyega in a smaller British film called Attack the Block, which if you haven't seen it, by all means go check it out. It's a good, cool little movie where living in a London high-rise in the projects and aliens attack, and him and his little band of wayward miscreants have to team up and stop aliens by beating them down with like bats and cricket bats and all that kind of cool stuff. I don't want to say bats. Movie. Yeah, no, it's a good, because they don't play baseball really in England. So
it's a cricket.
Yeah, it was a cricket bat.
It's still a bat. It's
yeah,
wrong sport.
Yeah, but it was a good movie. It was very. So I was aware of him, and I knew he had mentioned during that time during press that he wanted to kind of break out in America and do bigger films. Then when
you picked the right franchise.
And then I saw when they started announcing like cast for basically. And then I saw they were announcing cast for episode 7. They named him, and I was like, oh wow, John Boyega from Attack the Block.
Boy got hooked.
Yeah, I was like, good for him. I mean, he was really, really good, and I liked it too that because at first in Attack the Block he plays kind of a very badass hood, stoic, street youth, and then he's even Star Wars he's a lot more nervous and scary. He does an American accent, so right away it shows he's got range, he's got talent. So when I heard now that he's being added to Pacific Rim, my first cool, because I like him. I guess he's finally going to get to use his British accent because Pentecost was English. So, and right away I thought too, because one of the problems I think that Pacific Rim had, while personally I really don't care about quote unquote star power, and I know you're kind of in the same boat. It's more or less I figure I want good actors to play good characters. Yeah. So whether you're a massive A-list celebrity or a complete unknown, I really don't care, because when I watch that film, I'm watching the character.
A lot of times it's easier to see a more unknown person.
Yeah, and I know
if you see the same actor over and over again, you usually have like one role where they really stuck out to you. So I was like, hey, look, it's Daniel Radcliffe. It's Harry Potter. What's he doing in this movie?
Even though, to be fair, I think someone like Daniel Radcliffe is doing. I think it's easier. Well, yeah. I think it's easier now for actors, even if they're known for something specific, they can still break out. Whereas like back in the day, like Star Wars, like Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill, they really fell into that rut where it's like, okay, people could not see them as Luke Skywalker and
Princess Leia.
Yeah. Her last name was Organa, right? Leia Organa.
Organa. I'm not sure.
See, I got nerd cred. I knew her last name.
I knew her last name too.
Yeah.
Except how to pronounce it slightly.
I'm pretty sure it's Organa. Star Wars fans, please, sheathe your swords.
This is a kaiju.
I was gonna say this is a kaiju podcast, not a Star Wars podcast. Okay, if I mispronounce a Toho kaiju's name, then you can come after me. Okay. But yeah, and they ran into that problem. Whereas now you look at someone like Tom Hiddleston, who's known for playing Loki, but he's not stuck. He's doing well. He's doing he's doing other movies now. So I think now it's easier for actors to be accepted as a different character from like the role that broke them out. And also too, he's only played him once. I'm trying to think. With Pacific Rim 2 will come out before Star Wars. Star Wars doesn't come out we have Rogue One, and then the following winter we'll have. But no, it got moved. I don't know if it's still in summer or it's back in winter. I don't know. All these films are playing fast and loose with their release dates, so I'm not sure which one's going to come. But regardless, I think he's a great addition to the film. And I think he's a smart addition because, again, one of the things I had an issue with, but I was worried that might be a problem for like the wider kind of general audience, was that there were no big stars in that movie. there were people that were known. I mean, Idris Elba, I think, has since become a bigger name, ironically. Uh, but he was known. Charlie Hunnam, who played what's his name? Riley.
Riley. Yeah.
Riley.
Raleigh.
Riley. Yeah. I always want to say
some weird way to pronounce it.
Yeah,
even the other guy in the movie makes fun of him.
Well, yeah, because that guy always pronounces it Riley. He always like mocks him and like says it really obnoxiously. But because it's like the only time I ever really
Raleigh. It's like Raleigh. What is that? North Carolina.
I don't know.
Is it the same thing?
I don't know. But all I know is that the only time I ever really hear that name pronounced is when that guy is pronouncing it poorly, obnoxiously on purpose. So the only way I ever hear that name pronounced is Riley. So I actually don't know how you say his name in the movie, but he was he was in Sons of Anarchy. Ron Perlman, which is probably actually my favorite actor and probably one of the best character actors to date, if not one of the best of all time. And he's always in Guillermo del Toro's films. I think the only 2 films he hasn't been in, or a few films he wasn't in. Devil's Back. Well, actually, he's been in all of them, but usually Guillermo del Toro put him in his movies, and he played a really, really great character in this film called Hannibal Chow. Which they killed him off in the movie, but because they loved him so much, they loved this character so much, they added him in a kind of a mid-credit sequence showing him surviving.
You mean post-credit? Well, I guess it was.
Well, it was like halfway through. They do that thing now with credits where the first half of the credits will have some cool like animation thing with it, and then it cuts off and it shows you like some little sequence, and then it goes to the normal credit scroll where it's scrolling up or scrolling down or whatever. But yeah, and the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Charlie Day. Yeah, so, and there was a lot of Bern Gorman from Torchwood. What's that? Max Martini. Is his last name seriously Martini? That is amazing. Who, again, not a big name, but I've seen him in a lot of different things, a lot of voice acting. He's done some, so again, I've seen a lot of these actors. Clinton Collins Jr., he's been in a lot of things. Again, I've seen a lot of these actors in a lot of different things. I know I don't always watch movies with big stars, so I'm used to seeing a lot of character actors. I know you are too. So for me, it was great to see a lot of these different actors that I like. But for the general audience, with the exception of a few of these, and again, these aren't still like big stars, there wasn't like a big marquee name there. So right away, I was thinking, if they're lucky enough to get a sequel, or I should say, we're lucky enough to get a sequel, I think they should try to at least, cast someone who's good, who's got talent, who can, definitely add to the cast. But someone who's got a bit more kind of celebrity clout, because that'll bring the people who don't give a damn about giant monsters or giant robots into that theater, who are the people who weren't really going to the theater. So when I saw that they were adding John Boyega, I was like, good. They're thinking right here. Like he's got serious nerd cred. He's a good actor, and he's one of the stars of Star Wars. That's not a bad acquisition for the studio. So they got a new director who, he's kind of new on the scene in terms. He's been around for a bit doing stuff, but in terms of really becoming known, Daredevil is a really kind of breakout show. I know we both love it. Mm-hmm. So okay, this is kind of his first big feature. I think it might actually be his first feature film he's directing. So okay, and in terms of being bummed out about Guillermo del Toro not coming back, here's the thing: every time there's like something we said, oh, it'd be great to be a movie. Oh, they should do this, turn this into a movie, they should make this a movie, they should make a movie about this. My default, I'm always saying, oh, it'd be great if Guillermo del Toro. They should make Guillermo del Toro do that. Oh, Guillermo del Toro should direct that. Guillermo del Toro is one man. And I think I always kind of default to him because right now he's probably my favorite director. Right? I kind of used to always say that about James Cameron. I really love James Cameron. Okay, I know there's a lot of people who are going to hate on out there for that. If you like Avatar, you don't like Avatar, whatever, but you can't argue that James Cameron's the man who brought us Aliens, he brought us the first 2 Terminators, The Abyss. He's pushed technology and filmmaking so much, but I think James Cameron is kind of up there in age. I think he's going to die on Pandora.
Jesus.
So I don't think we're going to see any other movies from James Cameron that don't have the word Avatar in it, which, whatever. So it kind of left Guillermo del Toro, and I'm like, but now it's kind of falling into the same problem, whereas, all right, have him direct everything, but he can't direct everything. He's one man. So maybe this will now be another director, another person out there who can kind of, make these kinds of movies the way we love them. So now when I'm thinking to myself, who would be a great choice for the Dino Riders movie? Well, before I would have just said like Guillermo del Toro, but now it might say, hey, The Knight would be a good choice too.
Well, the thing that's so good about del Toro is he's just his visuals, like his cinematography, the fact that he uses mostly practical effects. Like,
when he can.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Not a lot of tokusatsu effects in Pacific Rim.
No, but
although he
can't really, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, and it's one of those things too. I think Del Toro, while he loves practical effects, he's also not stupid in that he knows how films of this kind are made in Hollywood this day and age. The studio's not going to greenlight a film with a bunch of people in big suits. It's just the way it is. But he did say, though, I saw early on before the film came out, that all the kaiju were kind of designed in a way where a human being, while maybe being really a stretch on their anatomy, could fit inside of them.
He was thinking of the cosplayers.
Yeah. But, and again, he also based a lot, not the design specifically off of like a lot of Ultraman kaiju, but kind of those style, because you had a lot of the Toho kind of Godzilla kaiju were more kind of anthropomorphic, just legit guy like in a
like
suit,
humanoidish.
Yeah, and like a lot of the Ultraman monsters, they played it a little bit more fast and loose with the anatomy, which kind of give them more of a
monstrous silhouettes and stuff.
And if you listen to the commentary that he did on Pacific Rim, he talks a lot about that. He actually was influenced a lot from Ultraman.
Well, again, he's a huge anime fan in general, which is why the movie's so awesome anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it's
got a lot of homages.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too because obviously a year later, Legendary put out Godzilla, and that film did better. But it's funny, a lot of fanboys complained about that film, and a lot of the same fanboys love Pacific Rim, which really I didn't really understand because a lot of the big problems they had with Godzilla. I mean, yeah, so he was not on the movie enough, da da da. But, it's not the same about not having a guy in a suit. And then those same people turn around and talk about how Pacific Rim was like a total love letter to tokusatsu fans and how, it felt more like a classic, kaiju film from Japan. I'm like, first of all, there was not a single practical kaiju in that whole movie. There was way more CGI.
But I think it's because obviously Godzilla has the history of using suits, whereas this obviously is a new
and I think that's why, because even though
they don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, other than the genre itself. But because these are all new characters, these kaiju are not, kaiju from before. These are all new monsters, I think that's why. Which I'm just saying, I thought it was funny because it was like, wow, yeah, Pacific Rim had way more CGI, and we just watched it the other night too, and I was looking, I'm like, wow, there is a lot of CGI. I mean, it's good, and I'm not one of those people who complain about CGI, so for me, I don't care, and it looks amazing. But I'm just saying, yeah, nah, if you're a tokusatsu purist, there is no reason that you should like Pacific Rim, because it kind of takes tokusatsu and just ass kicks it out the window. I'm just saying, but yeah, no, but and again, it really did feel like a love letter, which interestingly enough, a lot of the mainstream audience seemed to stay away from that film, whereas the following year, a lot of the hardcore fanboys and fandoms took some issue with Godzilla. But the mainstream audience really was the one that responded to it. They really, really liked it. So it's kind of, so when I tell people, why don't they just make movies just for fans? Well, granted, Pacific Rim is a kind of a lighter example of why they don't do that. But again, that film didn't do as well, even though it was way more of a hardcore classic kaiju film.
And part of that was the marketing. They didn't do a very good job marketing the movie.
No, and it seems like they always did to Del Toro. They always they did the same thing with Crimson Peak, which is a gothic romance. And because essentially no one does gothic romance anymore, the studio really didn't.
Hey, there's ghosts in it. I know. Let's make it a horror movie.
Yeah, and that's
At
how
least make it look like one.
Yeah, and that's how they sold it. So they took the two or three scary shots where a ghost is actually kind of doing something horrific, and they just milked the hell out of it in all the trailers. And then you watch the movie, and it's like, well, this isn't a haunted house movie. Well, no, but it's not supposed to be. But it was marketed that way, and I think because the Transformers films were and still are profitable films, despite what your opinion may be of them.
The wide audience probably is like, hey, look, big monsters. Is this like a Transformers offshoot?
Yeah, and that's what I thought, because I said, well, fine. I mean, I don't really much care for the Transformers films. I assume you're of the similar.
I never saw the fourth one. I don't really remember.
Yeah,
it's all a blur.
Yeah, but they make a lot of money. The wider audience loves those films. Okay, and I think the problem was some people might have thinking like it might be okay. If you like the Transformers movies, it's a Transformers ripoff. Well, I'm not gonna want to watch the knockoff. I want to watch the real thing. If you hate the Transformers movies, it looks like another Transformers. Well, I hate the Transformers, so I don't want to see another one of those. So I think you basically ran into that problem. And I think what they should have done was market it more heavily on the kaiju end of it, because again, there really wasn't anything else like that.
And they kind of missed out on the whole, like, for better for worse, commercialization, like making toys and stuff for kids. I mean, I know they made some toys, but like you would think, big monsters, big robots, that would be like a cash cow for young boys and girls.
When I was growing, I grew up in the times where it didn't matter what they could
Hell,
be.
in the movie itself, they even say, in the beginning, initially, after the initial wave, they started fighting. They made toys.
Yeah, because they started beating the kaiju. So now the kaiju went from being like, these apocalyptic monsters to like,
toys will only exist in the movie universe.
Yeah, I mean, they've had them toys, and now they're actually doing like
more like collectible figures.
Yeah, like X Plus has just did a really nice figure of a leatherback, which may or may not end up in our collection very, very, very soon. But yeah, so there is, and I think now with the upcoming sequel, you'll start seeing more things on that. Right? But yeah, when I was a kid, man, they used to make toys for everything. There would be R-rated movies that kids were not allowed to see, but they would still make toys. And for a lot of it, that's how we found out about these movies. I found out about kind of the Alien franchise because they were doing all these toys of it, and I was like, I wasn't allowed to see the movies when I was really, really young, but I could play with I had all the toys, and so, but yeah, that's how they used to do it. So, but now they don't really do that as much anymore.
Missed opportunity.
Let's do like video games or something like that.
Hell, I'd play a freaking Pacific Rim video game. That'd be so much fun.
Now, with VR becoming a thing, like Oculus Rift, I know like PlayStation, they're coming out with doing a VR thing. Pacific Rim would be the greatest video game of all time. Now you're in the Jaeger, and you could do the thing too, where you have the two pilot system, where you can.
No, they don't do local co-op anymore.
Oh yeah, that's true. You'd have to link up with somebody online.
You'd have to send your friend home and go play with them.
Yeah, but that would be a fun game to play that way. And again, if the sequel does well, if that film not just does like they made it, but like really is a success. Then I think we're gonna it's like doors wide open. We can maybe get that anime prequel they were talking about. They were talking about doing another comic. I know they did like a graphic novel earlier.
Like a prequel one, I think, right?
Yeah, which I mean it looked good, but because this is so heavily influenced by like Japanese culture, I was kind of surprised they didn't do it in like kind of the old kind of late 80s, 90s manga style. Which maybe again if they do now, and again. Because again, it's important to show like the opening credits of this film shows the very start of the war. It shows the first kaiju, destroying the Golden Gate Bridge because the Golden Gate Bridge hasn't been destroyed enough. And it was funny too because the following year you see Godzilla coming up on the exact same side of that bridge, and you see how much bigger he actually was.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know how many people know, but that first kaiju you see is actually named the Trespasser. That was kind of the unofficial name for him.
Trespass into a not country. Oh, I guess country.
Yeah, country.
A world.
Yeah, the metaphor.
Dimension.
It was a metaphor for illegal immigration.
Oh.
But yeah, no.
Trump's gonna build a wall.
Yeah,
around him.
Trump's gonna build a wall around the dimensional rift at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and he's gonna make the kaiju pay for it.
Yep.
Mark my words. Mark my words.
That's the sequel.
That's the sequel.
Or I guess wherever the new breach is.
Yeah, and he's we gotta really protest against fundamental kaiju extremists, all that, right? It's bringing our country down.
But anyways, yeah.
But anyway,
I think too with the success of a Pacific Rim sequel, like I mean, Netflix just released Voltron as an animated series that to me seems really well. Maybe somehow we could get a Voltron movie, and could be geared more
there's
towards
big
kids.
robots fighting, and that's the thing, because I think right now everyone thinks that
God forbid they did a Evangelion movie like they tried to like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Or a Gundam movie.
And interesting enough, speaking of Evangelion, now, when people think of kind of big mech anime, there usually two come up: Gundam and Evangelion. And he's even gone on admitted saying that a lot of the Jaeger designs some of them were kind of loosely based off Gundam designs. The Russian one, I forget what it was called. Fact find. But I know that particular Jaeger, which by the way, we've already explained to you guys what kaiju means in the show. Jaeger is
Cherno Alpha was the team. I don't know if that's the name of the actual. Yeah, Cherno Alpha was the Russian one.
Yeah. So Jaeger is German for hunter. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why the robots are called Jaegers, or the hunters. They're the ones. So for those of you who didn't know, it's not just a delicious alcoholic beverage. It's a real German word. Jägermeister is a master hunter, I believe, right?
I think so.
I believe that's what it means. But anyway, so yeah, that fear people wondering like, why are they naming the robots after booze? And it's like, no, that's just a German word for hunter. But yeah, they had but that particular Jaeger was kind of designed off a particular Gundam. I don't remember what it was called. It was when he was doing promoting the film on Japanese television. He actually went to like one of the Gundam museums, and he actually was talking about pointing one. I based that one off that. So and that's the thing. The Jaegers aren't alive. They're not like organic. They're just they're machines. That's why they're called pilots. But there is like a neural interface, because as explained in kind of the opening credits prologue, when they first started building these things, they found out that these machines are just so big that because you're basically controlling them with your mind.
It's like mocap, but not.
With a giant robot. But they basically said because these machines are so big, the neural load was too much for one brain. So they implemented a two-pilot system, right hemisphere, left hemisphere. So basically, one pilot's controlling one side, the other pilot's controlling the side, and your minds kind of become linked as one. So you see each other's memories, and basically you're moving in tandem with each other. So as one person moves,
you have to move in sync.
But you move in sync because it's almost like, how you're able to move your right arm, left arm, your brain just does it without having to think independently.
That's why they have to be drift compatible so they can actually function as a team.
Yeah. And that reminded me a little bit of Evangelion, because even though really the Evas themselves weren't really mechs,
they were technically alive underneath.
Yeah, the armor was more of armor. They were more like kind of big cyborgs, obviously, because you could like get in their mind. You were like in that little pod, but in that one you were kind of.
And they kind of had their own, like
thoughts.
I don't want to say AI, but yeah, they kind of could take over.
Yeah, if really need be, they would go like berserk mode, if they would call it, and I know, but at that point, in them, the pilot were neurally linked with them too. So if the Ava like had its arm damaged, or you would. There's actually a scene too, I think, where like the Ava gets its arm ripped off or broken or damaged, and Shinji, the pilot of that Ava, one was like screaming because it felt like his arm was the same thing. And then there's a scene in the beginning of Pacific Rim where they're fighting Knifehead, and it rips off their left arm. Gypsy Dangers, that's the name of that Jaeger's left arm, and Raleigh. Like it started like he's grabbing his left arm, going screaming.
They even say like, "Oh, the left arm's dead."
Yeah, so he felt like his own left arm got ripped off because your nerves, everything is linked up to that machine. So basically, when that thing's being stabbed and gutted and gored and beaten, you're feeling that because.
Well, and again, that's kind of the whole traumatic experience for him, because his brother literally was ripped out. So it's like half of him. Like
basically,
he felt his brother die. Like he experienced it.
So and I like that. So right away he's pulling a lot from kind of mech anime, kind of mech lore. Again, it varies from different titles. And I mean, Gundam isn't quite the same as Evangelion. Evangelion is not the same as Macross, or for those of you who just know stuff in the West, Robotech. I guess we should probably get used to saying that since there's a movie of that coming out. Which, by the way, another big robot movie. Yeah. So that's for no other reason. That's good for that. But yeah. So unless you're really into anime and manga and that kind of stuff, you don't really know the mech stuff. And most people probably think, oh, it's like Transformers. It's not really like Transformers because the Transformers are smaller. Well, there are some big ones, but
they're technically like,
but they're sentient
aliens.
beings. Yeah, they're like mechanical life forms. They're not being piloted by people. So it's not really. But again, if you don't really know about that, you don't really know about that. So you just look at it and see a robot, and you just think, oh, it's Transformers and kaiju. Now you have, since then you had Godzilla that came out. They're making a Rampage movie with Dwayne Johnson. So now I think by the time Pacific Rim 2 comes out, there's going to be more, people are going to know more what that is. But at the time, no one knew what the hell a kaiju was unless you were a kaiju fan. No one really knew what the mech genre really was. There was an old movie called Robot Jox back in the day that some people I know were talking about. But really, there was no frame of reference for your average moviegoer.
Well, and again, it would have been a lot harder to do a movie like that back then, which is why there wasn't probably really any.
Yeah, again, you had a few. They did like stop
good.
motion,
yeah,
they did like that. But again, so really there was no frame of reference for the general wider audience for this movie, and I think that's kind of what hurt it. It's like we knew what it was. When we saw it, we were like, oh shit, yes please, here's my money.
Well, again, it had a lot working against it, but I'm hoping this time, now that a lot of people, probably rented it from Redbox or, whatever,
Because everyone loved it. When people did actually go and see it, they were all like, oh, this is actually really good. In fact, when I went and bought my copy, the guy behind the counter was like, here you go, enjoy your awesome movie. I was like, oh, I will, sir. But yeah, so I think now it's got more, it's got John Boyega, it's got one of the stars of Star Wars.
It's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, so it's got a lot of credit, and Del Toro's still involved, and that's what for me is like, okay, I'm all for Denied, and I hope he does a kick-ass job because I want another good director out there that really can, like, okay, now another good nerd director, if that makes it, who can do take these geek properties and treat them right. Yes, they wanted to make money and they have to appeal to a wider audience, but at the same time, I always say there's directors and there's filmmakers. Right now in Hollywood, I think there's a lot of directors, but there's not a lot of filmmakers. And I'm looking for another filmmaker. Cameron, again, he's in Pandora, far away, hanging out with blue people. So he's kind of out of the mix in terms of that. Del Toro, hey, he's not going to stick around for one thing forever. He's got work to do. So let's get somebody else out there who can deliver movies on this caliber. So John Boyega in Pacific Rim 2, so I think it's safe to say Daisy Ridley in Godzilla 2. Maybe, that would be a great move for them. They can basically just,
And then if they somehow did a, I don't even care if it doesn't make sense continuity-wise, just do a standalone Godzilla, Pacific Rim crossover.
Well, that's the thing. People are like, oh, it wouldn't work. Well, that's the thing. Just do another Godzilla for Pacific Rim.
Just make him one of the kaiju.
Yeah, or,
Or a special one.
Yeah, I mean, there was initially talks when Del Toro was... Again, I don't know how much of Del Toro's original script for Pacific Rim 2 is... something I should point out. In addition, there's also a new writer for Pacific Rim 2. It got the... I'm just getting his name. Derek Connolly, who was one of the writers of Jurassic World. So you've got...
Which was a huge hit.
Yeah, at the time, it was the third highest grossing film of all time. So you've got the writer from Jurassic World, one of the stars from Star Wars. There's a lot going for this film. So I kind of hope that Thomas Tull, applies that to Godzilla 2, which something tells me he is. But yeah, so there's a lot going on for Pacific Rim 2. Regardless, even if nothing changed on the production side, a sequel would have still been just as good. But I think now, because they're doing a lot more mainstream stuff with it, it'll do well, so we can keep making more Pacific Rim movies. And now we can also... Pacific Rim is a cinematic universe waiting to happen. There's much... The decades leading up... Because, again, the opening credits shows you the start of the war, and then the film picks up kind of at the end of the war. Mm-hmm. So there's, decades in between...
That they can go and have fun with.
yeah. So, I'm like, you could do an entire anime series that takes place just in there. You could make prequel movies, and there's there's so much you can do with. So if these films start doing good, like really good, in typical
Got
Hollywood,
a lot of potential.
yeah, Hollywood fashion is we're gonna keep making these things until they stop making us money.
Bleed it dry.
Yeah, and I'm just like giant robot, giant monster cinematic universe. Yes, please. They're doing a Godzilla, Kong mashup cinematic universe. Yes, please. They're doing a Rampage movie. Yes, please. Just more giant monsters at the movies. So, like I always say, please support these films. Go see these films. Even if you think it looks like it might be derivative of something else, give it a shot because it might surprise you. For a lot of people who thought Pacific Rim was going to be some weird, Transformers-esque movie.
Real Steel-like movie.
Yeah. Well, hey, Real Steel was good.
I know, but didn't they come out around the same time or no?
Yeah, and again, I'm surprised they haven't done a Real Steel too. But anyway, but yeah, and then they saw the movie and they were pleasantly surprised. And even if they liked the Transformers movies, they liked this film too because it wasn't trying to copy them. It was being its own thing. I mean, big robots can be a lot of different things. That's not all the one thing.
Anime has shown this.
Yes, yes, it has. So please go and check it out. Again, it's got John Boyega in it. So hey, if you like Star Wars,
I hope Idris Elba will be back because
I'm sure they'll show up.
He's sexy as hell.
Yeah, well, there'll be some flashbacks.
I know.
I just want more Mako because she was, I think she was the breakout star of that film, and I just want to see more of her work. I want to see her break out in the West in general. She would have been my first.
The perfect Motoko Kusanagi.
Yeah, she really would have been.
And I'm sure if that movie was a breakout hit, she probably would have been.
Yeah, again, but again, like I said, maybe this time around, if the sequel does really, really good and it does break out big, then now a lot of these other actors can again because this film has pretty much an international cast. The one American really got American character in the film and is played by a British guy. But yeah, they had actors who were Mexican. They had there was Ron Perlman, obviously, American playing American with a non-American name. What did he say? It was named after his favorite historical figure and his second favorite New York Szechuan restaurant because he was called Hannibal Chow in the film. Probably some of the best shoes I've ever seen in any movie. Those shoes.
Those snakeskin boots.
Yep. But yeah, so again, I'm excited for it. I'm excited that Legendary Pictures is trying to really build, and they're essentially they are both Marvel DC. Should point out that while Pacific Rim was initially released on their Warner Brothers, they're now doing that film with Universal. They're still doing Godzilla with Warner Brothers, so they're going to be doing both things with those two studios, but it's still Legendary. So they are the Marvel DC right now of the Kaiju Cinematic Universe, which is, good for them because they win no matter which way you look at it. So yeah, that's really about it. I mean, again, with the exception of those kind of announcements, that's really all there is to say because prior to that, we didn't even know if this film was happening. It was just, like I said, on again, off again, on again, off again, on again, off again. So it's on again. New director, new writer coming in. I'm sure they're going to build off Del Toro's existing script. And Del Toro's still involved. He's not directing, but he's still there. He's still backing it. He's promoting the hell of it. He's always on Twitter just, fist pumping every new, added person to this project. So that's good. So now, I think really,
last thing to say is if you haven't seen the first one, go watch
it. Yeah, really go see it. I mean, it's a damn good movie. That's really all I can say about that movie. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
But it's Guillermo del Toro, so I'm not surprised.
It's a movie with heart.
So, the Knight has his work cut out for him, but you know what? If Del Toro feels that passionate about it, I am gonna. And again, from what I've seen, Daredevil is amazing. So, let's see what he can do. And I'm rooting for him because he looks cool. He's got tattoos. That's awesome. Looks pretty badass. Let's see what he can do with a movie like this, and maybe now we can finally get another good filmmaker out there that we can look to for.
And another good franchise.
Yeah, and make it a franchise now because like I said, it definitely deserves to be. So yes, Pacific Rim 2 may or may not be called Pacific Rim Maelstrom. We'll see, and it comes out February 23rd, 2018, as of right now, unless that changes. I know Clint Eastwood's son, is apparently in talks to maybe be in the film, but that has yet to be confirmed. So we'll see what happens with that down the road. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about this film, in future episodes. Something tells me, this won't be the last time it comes up in conversation. So thank you to my lovely co-host as always.
That's what I do.
And no gestures this time.
I've learned.
You've learned that they're wasted on the good people out there. So, all right. Thank you all for listening to the Kaiju Cataclysm podcast. If you have not already, be sure to subscribe to this channel for more of this.
And like and share it.
Yes, like and share. Please.
Share love with everyone.
Yes. Obsessively so. But yeah, so thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.